Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Progressive. It's not with a C, it's with a G. I am Santita Jackson, and we have got to talk about all things election today. All things election. There are a lot of undecided voters out here. Are you one of them? What are you seeing? What might push you over the line? I'm watching all of these shows. I'm listening to podcasts and streams, and I've been on more than a few myself now. And I'm listening to what people are saying. I'm listening to the questions that are being asked. I'm listening to how issues are being framed. Listening to and looking at the October surprises and all of that. How can these surprises, how can these last appearances that the candidates and their supporters are making before you, how might that be shaping or reshaping your vote? How might that change your mind or solidify your thinking in terms of whom you want to vote for at the top of the ticket and going down ballot? So please, everybody, check in with the Morning Stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe there. And please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page and become my friend. And we're streaming there as well. On X, we're on at Santita J, and at Santita J Show, the at Santita J Show. Let's get to it, everybody. Go to vote.org. Early voting has started. It's not, election day is not just November 5th. It's happening right now. It's happening right now. So please go to vote.org. Find out if you're still registered. Find out where you need to vote. Go on and get registered. If you are in a same day on-site voter registration cleared state, that's great for you. That means you just go in and you get registered. Do not get a provisional ballot. If you're getting registered there, get a ballot. Go into the booth. That's what you need to do. So I want to find out from you what you're doing, what you're thinking. What is your thinking? What is your thinking about this vote? What is your thinking? We've got a tremendous panel. And in both hours, we're going to have one of our dear friends, Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who was featured rather prominently in Vigilantes, Inc., Greg Palast movie. Indeed, he's probably just consistently, I would say, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson from Rainbow Push, probably the most powerful man in state politics in the state of Texas. He served in the in the Senate there, extremely powerful. Then he pivoted from the Senate to become a county commissioner for one of the largest counties in the country, Harris County. Harris County includes Houston. Houston is about to overtake Chicago as the third most populous city in the country. And his staff expanded exponentially, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson. So through his career, we have been able to see how important county politics are. I was at a fundraiser last night for Auntie Maxine Waters here in Chicago. And the person who introduced her was President Toni Preckwinkle. Who is she? Toni Preckwinkle is the president of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. The Cook County Board of Commissioners, among other things, gives assigns the city of Chicago our budget. Do you know how tremendously powerful that is? And she's the head of the Democratic Party here in the state. She is the most powerful, really, figure in Democratic politics in Illinois. She is one of the most powerful names you do not know. Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson. I mean, when you really look at the tremendous power that this woman wields, and she's a former teacher. And it's so funny. All the people who were taught by Mrs. Preckwinkle, number one, they don't know her as President Preckwinkle, even though they voted for her. They know her as Mrs. Preckwinkle. And it's helped me to develop a great deal of affection for her because all of her former students absolutely love her. They love her. They love, including our beloved Alana Joy Ford. May she rest in peace. She was taught by Mrs. Preckwinkle, and she just loved her. She said she fuels my love of learning, my love of reading. And she has been someone who's fought for public schools and for all people to have access to great public resources. So we're learning a lot about this political process. That's why voting down ballot is so important to everybody, not just at the national level. The counties control how you live. The judges. Jeanette, we're going to be talking with Reverend Wilson, and I are going to be talking with Betty Magnus, the political director at Rainbow Push, and we will be posting Reverend Jackson's personal choices in this election cycle. Personal, because our organizations do not endorse. So let's get right to it. Last night there was a town hall. President Trump had been invited to it by CNN. He said, no, thank you. He passed on that. And of course, this is in light of some revelations, interestingly enough, from one of his former top assistants, that he was a fascist, that he feels him to be a fascist, and that he wanted generals who uh, would be as loyal to him as Hitler. What I find interesting about all of this, quite frankly, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, Rainbow Push, head of Push Excel, and Dr. LaShawn Latrice, community activist, but uh, psychologist, community psychologist. She really helps us to understand the trauma that we've experienced as a community, individually and collectively. She is part of the Make Noise for Change. Ariel Gold, executive director of the Fellowship of Reconciliation. Attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant lawyer, civil libertarian, great social critic. I encourage you to find anything that he has written. That's how I first met him. Uh, it's interesting to me that while he had control of the nuclear codes, Mark Fancher, we didn't hear any of this. So it always makes me wonder, quite frankly, you're like, okay, you all are coming out with the most awful things that you can say about anyone. And I just always have to wonder. And I say that not as a defender of Trump, and I shouldn't have to say that to you, but I say this with my background. Dr. King was positioned by the mainstream media for assassination. And that's a fact, Reverend Wilson. Mark Fancher, you understand that very well. When the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, Chicago Sun-Times, Tribune, et cetera, when they turn against you, you're already under investigation. He lived under IRS audit the entirety of his public career. J. Edgar Hoover brought him into his office to present evidence to him of his personal life and threatened him with exposure. And said, now, if you leave the movement, I won't expose you. Imagine that, with all that we found out about J. Edgar Hoover, which 50, 60 years ago, you didn't know. He was the hero, right? I'm just always curious about these revelations right now, when we know authoritarianism, that is a power thing, everybody. It's not a power thing, everybody. This is something that people flex when they are in power, period. That is what we see. One of the questions that you need to be asking is how these people are going to make your life better. Who's going to end war? Who's going to redirect these war resources to you? I mean, I think all of it. I think you need to know about everybody, but the most unsavory aspects of many of these candidates we don't hear about. Mark, I mean, let me start with you, Mark, and that is something that, because I've read things about. I've seen my father get more praise now that he's in a wheelchair and he can't really speak like they did with Muhammad Ali than ever. But in real time, he's a threat. He's the most horrible person that we've ever seen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm always looking out the corner of my eye when I see people who were loyal to you. When this man had his hands on the nuclear codes, when he had access to that, you mean to tell me you were not worried then? You didn't sound the alarm then, Mark Fancher?
Yeah, the scriptures reference this. I mean, this is the fate of the Old Testament prophets, where they were persecuted, they were harassed, they were tortured, and they were killed as long as they were alive. But once they passed on, then somehow they were elevated in status. And it happens that way historically with people who are visionaries and who pose a threat to the status quo. I would not begin to suggest that Donald Trump is a prophet
At
or,
all.
could in any way be placed in that category. But in a very different kind of a way, I think that he finds himself in the same space that prophets find themselves. And what I mean is this, more than a year ago, my personal prophecy, if you want to call it that, was that neither Donald Trump nor Joe Biden would be on the ballot
Yeah.
by November. And I had reasons for thinking that. And it was because both of them were a liability to the powers that be. They both presented real fundamental problems to the continuing dominance of the oligarchy. And so half of my prediction came true. But the second half, with respect to Donald Trump, up until recent weeks, I chalked up to the belief that whatever threat that he posed to the oligarchy, they were disregarding because they believed that his chances for actually succeeding, for actually being elected, were such that they didn't have to worry, that the person that they wanted in charge of the US was going to win the election. Uh, Things are starting to look a little bit different now. As we get closer to the election, Trump's chances seem to be increasing. And whenever it looks as though someone who poses a real threat to the oligarchy is about to take power, then somehow those people are eliminated in one way or the other, not necessarily through assassination, but somehow their chances and prospects and opportunities are taken away. And, Trump is not preaching goodness, and he's not trying to bring the U.S. into a position of moral, righteousness or anything like that. But what he is doing is he's way off script in terms of what the oligarchy wants. The oligarchy wants a certain amount of support for its empire, its global empire, and it works through NATO. NATO is fundamental to its maintenance of its international imperialist control, and Trump has gone on record as saying that he's not in favor of that. They need boogeymen, they need enemies that they can tilt against, so that they can continue to build their empire. And the boogeymen that they've identified are people like Putin, China, and others. And these are people that Trump has said that he will cozy up with, that he likes, and that he will work with. So those are just a couple of examples of how he's way off script in terms of what power really wants in the form of a president who's going to have their hands on the apparatus and the infrastructure of government. So the fact that there are these new revelations about him leading up to the election really is sort of consistent with what might be expected. These might be panicked last-ditch efforts to try and discredit him so that they can frustrate the potential success that he might have on election day.
Well, indeed, Robert Williams says because they're all liars, crazy, and of low character, just like him. I mean, this is just a nest of nastiness. What I'm trying to find out right now is how our lives are going to be made better, Ariel Gold. I mean, the thing is, you have a conflict. I mean, you have what's happening to the Palestinians in the Middle East and the Arab community is about to explode into a world conflict. They're sitting on a big tranche of the world's resources, oil, gas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And just a real fight for that area. But what is happening over there, no one's paying attention to. I mean, not paying attention to the fact that this could explode into a world war. And we have absolutely ignored the Congo, Mark, and what's happening in Haiti. Haitians are being slaughtered and they're living under duress every single day. And somehow they don't make it into the conversation, Ariel. And international affairs are impacting how we live. But you know what's impacting how we live? What's happening in North Carolina? These folks behind this hurricane, Ariel, they are desperate. people are still, hundreds of people are still missing. I mean, just, you know, I just, and then there, and you still have a lot of, but they have more than a million people in North Carolina have voted as of several days ago. So even in spite of those hurdles, people are getting out and they're voting. More than 24 million Americans have voted already. So everybody, please get out and vote. So Ariel, but some people are still undecided. They say that the race is tighter than this. I think that with all that we have come to, that has at least been reported about Donald Trump, the race is still tighter than this. One word. Did you saw at least some of the town hall last night with Kamala Harris, and I thought she did a wonderful job. I thought she was. You see her really struggling with the issue of Gaza. I think, Mark, between what she really feels to be true and also bending to the zeitgeist because the narrative has changed. But, I mean, she marched in the anti-apartheid protests. I'm a witness to that when we were at Howard in the 80s. I get it. That having been said, people are still undecided. And it was interesting last night, Ariel, as you know, they had a room full of people who were undecided. So, I mean, what do you see? And I'm going to keep asking this question through November 5th, everybody. Don't be bored because every day something new happens that can help you to help reshape your view of the election. Ariel Gold, what do you see? Here you go, shaking your head as you come to the microphone.
I am worried.
Oh, boy.
I thought she did well at the town hall. I did. And I don't think these are the times that we used to be. I don't know that town hall is what decides the election. I think it's like political stunts, like Donald Trump working at McDonald's. I thought was a really fantastic stump. I wish Harris would have done that.
Why? Look, no, before you go, why do you think that it was? Because it just made me shrug my shoulders.
It made me shrug my shoulders, but I imagine like the country. Also, he looked kind of fantastic and fun. It gave us something to talk about. It was on Twitter and going a little viral on, but it said, it's fun and acting and popularity contest. It's more Hollywood than Washington, but that's what our elections are these days.
Okay.
And Harris, by comparison, is, slow and steady and fumbling over Gaza. And I know we keep talking about these undecided voters, and I know that is a factor, but I think a really big factor as well is getting people out. And are people invested enough, excited about, or too angry to come out to the polls?
What do you think? I mean, because the election itself is this is a lot of stagecraft. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. My question for you is there anything that you're seeing, hearing, and that you're hearing from people? Because you're not a novice in this space.
No, I mean, the far left or the Twitter left, we could say, I guess, I feel really worried. There's this movement about punishing the Democrats. We're going to punish the Democrats because of Gaza. Well, the thing is, you can't punish the Democrats. If the Democrats lose, we're punished. The whole country is punished. But that's what I hear a lot of. I'm going to vote my individual conscience and punish the Democrats. I can't vote personally for somebody who's been complicit in a genocide. I think, what does this have to do about you personally? You're not personally what's at stake here. This is about the best strategy for our country to make progress and not go back. As as the Harris campaign says, we won't go back. So I think this in America, it's become so individualized. Like, I'm going to vote about how it makes me feel. I'm going to vote according to how my gut feels. And in that sense, people aren't voting according to policy and the issues and, what the candidate really said, even if she does well at a town hall. And I worry about that. And she's not just, she's she's pretty bad on Gaza. She doesn't know what to say. And I worry about
But you know what? I look at, I assign that as we move around. It lets you know the power of the money it lets you know the money that's in this conflict.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we continue to put it on her. We continue to put it on these other politicians instead of looking at the powers that be and the stranglehold that they have on American politics and the fight over these resources that no one wants to talk about. This is I mean, so much is being laid bare, Ariel and Mark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this stuff is now the quiet part's being said out loud. I mean, and so let me see what John Holloman said. Donald J. Trump is on the ball. He is more shrewd and willing to take more risks than Kamala Harris. And the fact is, John, he as a white man, quite frankly, has more space. But I mean, that resonated with you, Reverend Dr. Wilson. But that's not the only thing. That's not the only thing, because you don't get this far in the process unless you're kind of sort of in. Remember, he has been president before. So let's not act as if this is someone who's a novice and someone who's new to the dance, because he's not. Reverend Dr. Wilson, what do you see?
Well, I think several things. I think Vice President Harris is a sitting vice president, and she's walking a very thin line based on what she wants to do without discrediting the man who put her in the office and endorsed her. And so I think her heart is somewhere else on Gaza, but she's trying to balance what she says and how she says it. I think Trump is a tremendous actor and producer of a show. Running for president is a show for him, and he figures out how to keep you interested, keep you excited, and just does all kind of crazy stuff. So he knows how to move the ordinary person, as Ariel said. Ordinary people, they don't know what oligarchy means. They don't know how to spell it. Mm-hmm. They don't care about it. What they think about every day is how I'm going to get from point A to point B, how I'm going to pay my bills. And, I remember chasing the gas company. Years ago, as you know, if you didn't pay your bill on time, then they just shut you off and they dig up the street in front of your house. So you try to beat them, Mark, to your house, and you couldn't pay the shut off people money. You'd have to rush to the facility. And so people today are struggling. The average, what they call middle class thing, they're not balanced yet.
I mean, because Reverend Wilson, all this talk about the middle class.
There's no middle.
I said people are living bone on bone. I mean, what are you talking about? What's middle class means? You have some space. People don't have space.
No, seniors are living from one monthly Social Security check, which doesn't cover medicine, doesn't cover extra visits to the doctor. So people they're not at a high level of thought about this. They're thinking, well, if I vote for this person, they're going to at least maintain the status quo or make it a little bit better. But that's why I keep telling people, you got to go down ballot where you will know these people and what they say or do will impact you directly. And so when you look at, you talked about President Pretwinkle, she's head of the second largest county in America. She has a budget that is astronomical. She has power like none other. And people don't realize when you vote for commissioners, that's a powerful vote. You're going to meet your commissioner before you ever see the president, except on television. These judges that we don't think a lot about, every one of us have been to traffic court, divorce court, family court, probate court, law division, trying to sell or buy a property. You've been evicted. So you've been into those courtrooms, and you have to see these judges, many of whom, when they put on that black robe, it's a new day. You talk about an oligarchy. Well, that's where power is at the lowest level. Somebody puts on, I used to work in an office where we had 6 black judges had come out of the office that Justice Pynchon was from. And we'd go in those courtrooms and they would treat us like we were crazy. And then we would meet them on the weekend. They'd come to the office. And the oldest lawyer said to them, you think when you put on that black robe, you lose all sight of reality. You have forgotten where you came from, because they sit up there, get on that bench, and they would just make rulings that were just arbitrary. I say that to say the people, we've got to get people, as Ariel said, out to vote and understand to be patient when you get in the room, because you do have power. It's not absolute power, no, but you can't be swayed by antics, political antics. I'm going to go to McDonald's. Well, he's not cooking at McDonald's every day. He's not working at the window every day when you have people driving up, shooting at through the window, when people are coming in the place challenging you. He doesn't have to do that. There were no people in the restaurant. They shut it down so that the president could play like former president could pretend to cook some French fries.
Well, wait a minute. Robert Williams said the McDonald's was closed. Well, it would have been. And the customers in the SUV were his campaign operatives. And you know what? And just having, with the Secret Service, they would not let some random
person do that. It would be a
would.
risk. I mean, it was hard enough for the last 2 assassination attempts alleged.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if, just as a candidate, they're not going to let you. It's hard.
I remember when your father was running.
Well, he was a headache for the Secret Service because he would try to change the schedule. And I never forget one of the heads in Chicago who was African American. He said, "Look, I got you from this moment to this moment till this is over. You don't decide to change your schedule and go anywhere. You have this." He said, "There are 18 people moving every time you move. They're sweeping buildings and stuff right around the site." So I think that we really have to let people know some of this is theater. Mm-hmm. And you have to push past the movie and realize that this vote will impact you directly. Young people will be impacted directly as they try to negotiate school and college, if they're in college, or any of these programs without getting over budget. Yeah, many families are struggling with healthcare needs, and this food insecurity is not a joke. It's real. I'm meeting people every day that can't get groceries, and these little programs that feed people once a week, it's not enough to give you. And then the school lunch program, giving these kids cheese every day and wonder why they're unhealthy cheese and unhealthy food. Not a vegetable in sight, very little fruit. And so I am more concerned about who's going to be in Congress. I was so proud to meet with Congressman Jackson, was meeting with an international group from Africa. Mm-hmm. His knowledge and understanding of our international reach and scope was just amazing. When the people from the Gambia, they were from Colombia, they understand what Mark talks about in terms of this global economic system that we're living in. And so we really have to have a broader understanding, because there are people among us that are looking to the policies that we are now initiating as Americans that rape other countries. What has happened to Haiti is unconscionable. They took just basic resources from Haiti and allowed the Dominican Republic to thrive and grow as a destination for weddings and other things. On the same island, you have Haiti with extreme poverty, unprecedented violence, and no response. It's worse than Ukraine. It really is. And so I think that voting now to take control of the House, maintain control of the Senate is significant for us. No matter who becomes president, you need to control those people that allocate resources to the rest of us and these state-related bodies. If we think of anything about those young men in Tennessee who were fighting for justice and equity, we have to elect state representatives and state senators that care about feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, and setting those who are incarcerated free and restoring them to citizenship. If the people who serve time in every state could vote, this would change the election.
You're talking about the undecided. They're decided. They just don't have the power in
Mhm.
every state to vote. In Illinois, our convicted felons who serve their time can vote. People sitting in county jail who haven't been convicted can vote. That's not true in every state.
Mhm.
Unfair. And so I just hope that we will vote to elect people who will be sensitive to the needs of the masses.
Dr. LaShawn Latrice, what are you hearing? What are you seeing as you work out in the community, real close to the ground, make noise for change? What are you hearing? Are people undecided? Are they decided? What are they deciding? What are you seeing?
I think people are undecided in many respects, and I think they're very confused. Like, I got several calls yesterday about the town hall discussion that I didn't know was going on, which
Mm.
caused me to tune into it. However, when I got the phone call, it was more so a sign of desperation. Like, are you watching this? And I'm like, what? It's a town hall discussion, and they obviously did not like what they were hearing, and they felt like it was a lot of evasiveness in responding to real issues. People feel like if if you can't answer a question, or we can't ask you a question and expect an answer, how can we go in and vote? And think that we're going to get answers on the other side. So, and keep in mind, these are different demographics of people. So when I found out it was a town hall, I began to call and just find out what people were thinking about what they had seen thus far. And it didn't help those who already were undecided or not sure which way they should go. Many of them said they were either going to vote independent or vote for themselves. And at first, when people say those type of things up until the election, you think they're joking, but they're not joking. They feel like they don't have a chance and their vote doesn't have a chance. And so when you think about a lot of these issues that have been mentioned even on this call, we're just not getting straightforward answers, and it's too many people being severely impacted and traumatized even up until this point. And I think the examples of what's going on in the world around us and how it's being responded to is being perceived as this is an example of what is going to happen on the other side. So people are using what's happening today to say, if this is the way this is going, it's not going to get any better, no matter which candidate. So they're not zeroing in on Trump. They're basically saying these people are doing these things intentionally, and they feel like this is not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's like they've already felt abandoned by the Democrats as Black people, as disenfranchised people. So now you're talking about what's happening on the Republican side. Nobody trusts Trump anyway. They're not thinking about him. There are a group of people who feel like he is speaking to some of their issues, and those are the people that are gravitating to him. But it's not because they just trust him wholeheartedly. They just feel like he is who he is and he doesn't hide it.
So they feel that he has more integrity because he's just
Absolutely.
wow.
Yep.
See,
And they're taking that arrogance as integrity because he says whatever comes to the top of his mind. He does come across as unhinged to a lot of people, but they feel like at least
unhinged
you're
or just someone who what did Chris
no
Christopherson
some of his some
no
of
no
his
hold no hold on let me just say this. There's a song, Me and Bobby McGee. Chris Christopherson wrote it 60 years ago. May he rest in peace. I was a huge admirer and fan of his. He said freedom, he wrote, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Is he unhinged or someone who just does not care? He is like, look, no. I mean, I'm being straight up with you
I
because
know.
people always call folks who want, because my father, and some people conquer fear by facing fear, summoning their courage, and whatever happens happens. I'm the, if I coward dies a thousand deaths. My mother used to say that to us all the time, and I think Reverend Wilson, you've known us so well because my brothers, my sister, and I grew up never thinking our father would be alive at the end of the day. We had the Chicago police in the front of the house, private security in the house. That's how I grew up. So going away to college for me was frightening because I was like, what's going to happen when I'm gone? Just because I knew I would be I'd be up if I heard any sound, anything, even though we had security in the house, right? But my father would say, she would say, a coward dies 1,000 deaths. You have to keep on living. My father would say, look, if something happens to daddy, I'm going to do everything I can to stay with you, but you got to keep on going. Don't let these people frighten you. There's something more than this life. And I'm not making him, thank you, Mark. I'm not putting him in the in this prophetic tradition. I'm not. But there's some people who say, you know what? Shoot your best shot. Because remember, LaShawn, Dr. Latrice, he's been in the arena. This is someone who knows all of these people. I'm not making a case for him. I'm just trying to help you create the psychological profiles. This is someone who's not intimidated when he meets the president of any country because he knows them all. And he doesn't just know them, he knows them. You feel me?
Yep, absolutely.
So he's a little bit different now. He is.
So when I say he comes across as unhinged, he does come across to people as being unhinged. What I see is a person who is power struck. I think personally Trump doesn't care about the United States. I think that he is running for power. Like his whole thing is about power. I don't see him as a person who is presidential in that respect. But what I'm saying about people who are gravitating to him, they feel like he's speaking to what they want to hear. And they feel like the other person is not. And so that's why he's attracting people. And even in the respect of, we talked about those who have been convicted. He uses his conviction as a way to push himself. Whereas on the other side, with the Democrats, they're like, oh, a convicted felon. So when they say those type of things, what do you think they're doing to the convicted felons? They're pushing them away because it almost looks like they're being judged. Keep in mind, there are people who have been convicted and exonerated. So then you have people who are convicted, and whatever the circumstances are, they don't feel like when they step foot outside of those parameters, that should be something that they're identified with. Yet still, it's at the top of the election, but it's not being used to the advantage of those who could have used it. So I think that they messed up big time with that one.
Well, I mean, Mark, you see all these moving parts. We're hearing different things we're hearing different elements of this, of these issues from this panel. I mean, where do you see this going, Mark?
Well, I don't know where it's going, but I know where I'd like to see it go. And let me frame it this way. It's not a matter of just people speculating or imagining things. They have graphic video evidence of incidents in Gaza where there's a lone mother with her 3 or 4 small children who are walking down the street amongst piles of rubble that are the remains of buildings that have been bombed into rubble by Israeli Defense Forces. And then Israeli soldiers positioned down the street, taking dead aim at this family and just killing them in cold blood. Hmm. And this is something that happens on a daily basis. And it has caused the deaths of literally thousands and thousands and thousands of innocent men, women, and children. And so what we have, if you step back from it, is a candidate who, during the town hall last night, as I took it, framed the issue this way, that yes, this is going on in Gaza, but you've got to make a choice. She basically implied, as I took it, that this is going to continue to go on. But what you have to decide is whether you're willing to live with that in exchange for me being the same person who is going to take care of home, who's going to deal with the issues domestically that matter to you as an individual. So make your choice. And for those of us who are spiritually oriented, that's an unacceptable choice to give us. Because what's going on in Gaza is satanic. This is the work of Satan, to mow down innocent people like that by the thousands. And what you do is, when you frame the issue in terms of two evils, one being the lesser evil, on the one hand, you've got Trump, who will probably continue, or if not escalate, the crimes that are going on in Gaza. but in addition create chaos and disaster here in this country, versus Kamala Harris, who will also continue the crimes that are being committed in Gaza, but who may do a little bit better in the United States. And you tell us, choose the lesser of the two. For some of us, myself included, I can't choose the so-called lesser evil because that's forcing me. I think it's crafty, satanic kind of strategy to put me in the position of doing something that I never want to consciously do, which is to affirm evil. And so therefore I must withdraw. I must completely abandon both of those. I can't, as an honest man, I can't, as someone who is committed to my God, cast a vote for someone who tells me up front that they're going to perpetuate a genocide against innocent people. And I don't care whether it's something she's doing involuntarily or whether it's something that she strongly believes in. And I kind of think that she may believe in it, but she's still doing it. And I can't sign on to that. And so therefore, I must cast a vote for a third party candidate, in my case, Cornel West.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who say that that's a wasted vote, that that's something that is not a good thing to do, all I can do is take directions from the God I serve, who says, never endorse evil, never sign on to evil, do that which is righteous and that which is good, and leave the rest to me. And I think that unfortunately, there are too many people who are very much like Peter. When Jesus came walking to the boat on the water where his apostles were, and Peter looked out and Jesus said, come to me. And Peter stepped out on the water and he started walking toward Jesus on the water. All of a sudden, he looked around at the raging storm. He took his eyes off of Jesus. He looked at the raging storm and he became afraid and he began to sink. And all Jesus had said was, just keep your eyes fixed on me. I got the storm under control. As long as you stay fixed on me, I got it under control. And I don't think it's hard to imagine how in this situation, he's got it under control. Because even with people not voting for her, even if she loses the election, if it is true that there are a large or significant number, it doesn't have to be a large number, a significant number of people who vote for Jill Stein or Cornel West or even for Trump or whoever, what that communicates, not to the Democratic Party, because personally, I would like to see the Democratic Party fall apart. But what it communicates is that all of these people who think that they're ostracized and alone in their viewpoint and their rejection of the evil empire and the oligarchy and its two parties that serve it faithfully, and Zionism and all of these things, the people who think that they're alone are able to look at this and say, you know, there are other people who believe just as I do. And we now have the potential to find each other, to come together in a movement that breaks us out of this duopoly and builds something that's new and better. Now, that does not mean that there's going to be a cost. But the fact is, anytime that there's fundamental change and transformation in a society, there is a cost. There is suffering that goes with that. Jesus himself had to undergo torture and crucifixion in order to bring about fundamental transformation, because he dared to attack an empire. Dr. Martin Luther King, as heroic as he was, as celebrated as he is these days, and as much change as he was able to bring about, had to undergo assassination and ostracization and marginalization before he was killed, and the absolute chaos that followed in the wake of his death. But in the long term, it brought about some changes that were necessary and that God wanted to see. So yes, I don't deny that a Trump presidency will cause all kinds of problems, and it may lead to an absolute destruction of what we know. But maybe that's what's needed. We just don't know God's will, and we don't know his plan. The only thing that we can do is to follow his direction. And his direction is, do not sign on to genocide. Do not sign on to power that is committed to continuing corruption and persevering in a program that is destructive to people and goes against his will.
Ariel, Fellowship of Reconciliation, you feel as strongly, at least as strongly, about what is happening in the Middle East, about this genocide. And so much of, I mean, and that's not what's driving all your activism. I mean, but it's just, this is a horror that we're watching before our very eyes. I mean, because it's part of it, though. It's part of it because we're participants in it. You're reaching another kind of conclusion. What is it and why?
Absolutely. And I'll add that it's my people committing this genocide. And I don't know how we come back from this. But if that's my only issue.
No. Can I correct that? Can I correct that?
Yes.
This is not the Jewish people who are committing this genocide.
I know people say that to me, but a few things. One, that's part of Judaism, that every Jew is responsible for the deeds of the entire Jewish people. And I'm sorry, but it's more than half of the Jewish people on this planet Earth. So it just is. And I'm just obligated to do what I can because, and I forget the Hebrew phrase, but it says that each Jewish person is responsible for the entire community and responsible to act if the entire community is sinning. Anyway.
But I really think this is an important point, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is an important point because it causes a lot of confusion. Okay, I understand the theological point that you're making, but on another level, there are many people who need really, for purposes of analysis, to separate out Zionism from Judaism, because when they don't, then that contributes to anti-Semitism.
Yes.
And they need to be clear that there is a secular political doctrine, which is at the bottom of all of this, and that it's not just Jewish people who can and are Zionists.
No,
I think Kamala Harris is a Zionist. So I think we need to be very precise about who's responsible.
I totally agree, and I'm very quick to call out anti-Semitism and to name the fact that there are more Christian Zionists than there are Jews. There are more Christian supporters of Israel than there are Jews, and this is about the elite class. This is about the money. And if we look at Israeli public opinion and we look at what's happening there, the majority of Israelis support this genocide, very much so. The vast majority, over 60% of Israelis want to see Trump elected. And Israel is more than half of the Jewish people. So in the history of our people that all Jews are responsible for, when someday we have to go back and try to atone for what we did, we're all responsible for it. So that doesn't mean that, Zionist is all Jews or so on. And we are a growing dissent within our people. And the Talmud teaches us that each Israelite is responsible for the fate of the Israeli, the fate of the Israelites, the fate of the Jewish people. So anyway, that, in the same way that I would say that ordinary Germans were responsible, during the Holocaust. But okay, so that aside, if I'm responsible, so I want to do anything I can to make this stop and to get us to that point where we start atoning, because we can't start atoning until we stop bombing. I know from what Donald Trump says and what he did during his last presidency and his relationship with Jared Kushner that it can get worse than it already is. And he's told us that it will be worse. And I have every reason to believe that Kushner will be largely making Middle East policy. Kushner, who Netanyahu slept in the childhood bedroom of when he visits. This is a tight, close family, and Kushner wants to build those waterfront properties, and there's no question, and that's happening now. So I think we have to be, it's not about how I feel personally about voting for Harris, hold my nose, whatever. And that said, if you're not in a swing state, and Cornell is not, a threat to the election, he's not in those,
no, he's in Michigan. He's well, and living with the amongst the uncommitted. I mean, just this community who are losing family members. I mean, there's no one, if you really think about it. What is the movie 6 Degrees of Separation? everybody on some level,
Yep.
Ariel, Dr. Latrice, is shaped by this.
Yep. And
And
the American is responsible
yeah,
for what happens, because these are our tax dollars and this is our government. But
now,
I think
Robert Williams
strategically,
wants
if we
to run.
want to
No.
achieve a better outcome in the Middle East, we're going to have better chances. Our coalitions, our work, I think we're going to be in a better position under a Harris administration. Does that mean I like anything Harris is saying? Does she inspire me and make me feel good about voting for her? Nope, not at all. But I think this isn't about my feelings. It's about the best strategy for our country and for the world. If we want to be making change politically.
Well, you know, I've got people waiting for me on the other side, but I am going to give everyone about 30 seconds to close, because we're going to continue these conversations. Quite frankly, it's because every day something else comes out, and some aspect of what, so there's something that you see, something that you hear, something that you feel, that's shaping people's votes. Because some people want to vote early. Other people are saying, you know what? I want to wait until election day or get up on election day because I don't know what else I'm going to find out. There's just a lot to unearth here. So, Dr. Latrice, really a hard 30 seconds. What do you want people to know?
I just want people to know that because we are in a time that things are detrimental with the decisions that we make, with who we cast a vote for, what we believe, sometimes it's going to take for the United States to almost hit rock bottom and fall on its face to understand that right now everything is operating on a morally bankrupt option. And it's like right now, these things are so far-fetched, working across the aisles. I can't tell the difference between Democrat and Republican, and people are very confused and they feel like they've been left out of the conversation, and those things that matter to them don't matter to those who they are voting for.
Okay.
So that right there is going to impact how people vote.
Absolutely. Well, Attorney Mark Fancher?
No, I just want to encourage people to not lose heart and not to be overwhelmed by the events. These are unusual times, and great things come out of unusual times. Great things come out of turmoil and chaos and confusion, because it forces people to do some thinking, some analysis, some praying, some introspection, some reflection that they ordinarily would not do. And rather than listening to all the talking heads, including mine, listen to what God is telling you, and vote according to what you think and what you know to be right, and then let things proceed as they will. We've been through some hard times. Humanity has experienced much. We will survive this. It's just a question of how.
All right, Ariel, 30 seconds. Because I got to get out to the second hour, everybody.
Yeah, I'll just say we got a little bit of time left. I'm still waiting for Israel's bombing of Iran to take place, because, the U.S. is, what did Blinken say? He's trying to persuade them, or he's appealing with piles of weapons for them not to use the weapons we're giving them. So I'm still quite worried about that. But I'm just going to echo what's been said. Get out there and vote. Get out there and vote.
Well, I can leave you with this, coming out of the Black church, we were taught that Jesus came to disturb the comfortable and to comfort the disturbed. And we have all been brought for such a time as this. And that's all I got for you folks. Get out and vote. And let's begin to vote on that which is moral. I'm bringing up Rodney Ellis, Commissioner of Harris County. If you don't mind, can I get you to go to the second link, and I'm just going to come right to you because he's got storm repairs. He's down in Houston, and so I'm going to bring you to the second hour, Rodney Ellis, and I'm going to bring you down to the second hour so that you can open up the next hour, and then I'm going to let him go so his wife, who I went to college with, doesn't beat me up. That's my girl. Commissioner Ellis, I'm going to bring you on in the second hour.
Okay. And what time will it be?
Right now. Just hang up and the second link I gave you, just go right on over to that.
So get out of this one and go back.
Get out of this one and go back to the other one.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I love you all, and thank you for lifting up your clear moral voice, because these are moral issues, everybody, whether we want to embrace them or not. And that's something that my mother continues to remind us of. Every time I left the house, she always said, remember, be a good person, be a young lady. I mean, I might have been going to the store, but that was her dictate. That was her order. And we need to start looking at being not nice people, but good people, and being good to everybody else. So November surprise, and there are going to be all kinds of surprises because we're at an inflection point, everybody. Come on over to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show, and we will see you over there. Sending you much love, everybody. Second hour of the Santita Jackson Show begins in like 1 minute.